Hello, today we are going to be in John chapter 9. And so if you want to open up in your own Bible or you can follow along on the screen, you can do whichever one you choose. I want to just real quickly highlight a couple of things as we go through this before you even get into the text in very much detail. This chapter kind of has some contrasting ideas, which are kind of obvious, but I want to point them out anyways. There's this contrast between being blind. You'll look here in verse 1, and if I click on that, you should be able to see that word there highlighted several times. So this idea of being blind versus this idea of being able to see. So there's this contrast, blind versus your eyes that are opened or eyes that see. The word darkness isn't really occurring in this chapter, but there is still this idea of a contrast. Jesus, if you look at here, Jesus will say here in verse 5 that he is the light. Now this word doesn't occur a lot in this chapter either, but the concept here is that Jesus is a light and the Pharisees are in darkness. And again, those words don't really occur here, but there's this contrasting idea. And I kind of want to point that out. Now, I want to go through real quickly, not just through chapter 9. I want to take you all the way back to John chapter 1. And I want to kind of track this idea. I want to track an idea. So let me just take you back there real quick. John chapter 1. And I want to draw your attention to verse 9. John chapter 1, verse 9. And actually, you can even begin back here earlier in the chapter. You begin in verse 4. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. He came as a witness to bear witness about the light, that all might believe through him. He was not the light, but came to bear witness about the light. So all through here, this word light keeps occurring. John the Baptist was a witness to the light. The light was also life. Verse 4. This light was going to shine in dark places, spiritually dark places, and it was going to be a light. The darkness wasn't going to overcome the light. It was not going to be more powerful than the light. Verse 9 then says, the true light, watch this, the true light was coming into the world. So at this point, it was still coming. It was not yet there. The true light, then he makes this comment, which gives light to everyone. And I'll make a comment about this real quick, and we'll look at it in a minute. To everyone who chooses. The option is there. The offer is there, but not everybody will choose to walk in the light. So the true light, which gives light to everyone, was coming into the world. So we see this concept of light back in chapter 1. And we see that this is a concept that this light is the true light. As contrast, if you were contrasting that to a false light. So then you come to chapter 3, and you look here beginning in verse 19. And this is the judgment. The light has come. So in chapter 1, the light was coming. Here in chapter 3, the light has come into the world. Watch this. And people loved the darkness. Now I just mentioned a moment ago that the light was offered to everyone, but not everyone would choose the light. So the light is offered. The light has come into the world, and people loved the darkness rather than the light, because their works were evil. For everyone who does wicked things hates the light and does not come to the light. Verse 21. But whoever does what is true comes to the light, so that it may be clearly seen that his works have been carried out in God. But I want you to see here that this presents a choice. The light came into the world. The problem is these people, they didn't love light. There are some people who don't love light. They love darkness rather than light. And again, why? Why do they do that? Because their works are evil. So then let's skip from chapter 3. Let's go to chapter 8. And let's look at chapter 8. Computer is going slow here. Look at chapter 8, verse 12. Again, Jesus spoke to them. I am the light. Now, we already knew he was the light, right? But there was no direct claim in chapter 1, verse 9, although you could read down to chapter 1, verse 14, and it's very clear who the light is. Again, chapter 3 Jesus wasn't specifically saying that. But here, Jesus is specifically claiming that he is the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. So again, here is this question. Here is this opportunity. Are we going to follow the light? Because if we don't follow him, we're going to walk in darkness. So again, presented as two choices, right? Either walk in the darkness or you walk in the light. A lot of times people want to remove our decision from this, but scriptures don't remove our decision from this. This is our choice. So here in John chapter 9, so John chapter 8 was the one we just saw, John chapter 8, verse 12. Jesus now says, as long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. So again, very interesting, powerful statement here. Jesus makes several I am statements. We're not going to spend time researching those or reading those right now, but it is an interesting study. You should read in the Gospel of John. Look for Jesus's I am statements, and then go back and study Exodus chapter 3. Why is that such a significant statement? What is the significance behind this phrase, I am? Anyways, so let's stick with here, chapter 9 now. So Jesus, let's go ahead and read. As he passed by, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? See, the Jews had this concept, as many did in the world in the past, and even today. Many people believe that that if someone is blind, someone must have been a sinner, someone must have been wicked or evil. And so the disciples believe this. But Jesus says, it wasn't that this man sinned or his parents. But why is this guy born blind? Why does Jesus say he was born blind? That the works of God might be displayed in him. This guy's blind because I'm going to do something great in him and through him. And so this guy's blindness was going to now be used to glorify God, as we will see. So then here is this blind man, and Jesus heals this blind man. He tells him to go wash in the pool of Siloam. So he goes and he comes back and he sees. Now, he wasn't really sure who this Jesus was or who had healed him anyways. Look at what it says. So the question then becomes, people started saying, isn't this the guy that was blind? Verse 10 then says, so they said to him, then how are your eyes open? So they began to ask the question, how are your eyes open? And again, think about this in context. Again, the book of John, the Gospel of John is very figurative. Jesus is the light of the world. Jesus takes this guy who is born blind, he's never seen, and he opens his eyes. He takes him from darkness into light. In a very literal sense, he does this. But there's obviously a lot of symbolic meaning to this as well. So the question is, and look, this is a significant question. How did your eyes get open? And look at verse 11. The man called Jesus made mud, anointed my eyes, told me to go wash. So I went and washed and received my sight. Skip down and look at verse 19. So this blind man, his parents are called in, and the Pharisees are grilling them. How is it your son can see? See, they don't want to acknowledge Jesus. The Pharisees don't want to acknowledge Jesus as from God, as the Son of God. So they're drilling his parents. And it says, verse 18, the Jews did not believe that he had been blind and had received his sight until they called the parents of the man who had received his sight and asked them, is this your son whom you say was born blind? How then does he see? The question again. So a minute ago, the question was, how are your eyes open? Now look at this question. How does he see? How does he see? I want you to draw your attention to this answer of the parents. The parents don't want to answer this. The parents don't want to have a part in this because they're afraid of getting kicked out of the synagogue. So the parents said, his parents answered, we know that this is our son and that he was born blind, but how does he see? We do not know, nor do we know who opened his eyes. Ask him, he is of age, he will speak for himself. Now watch, this is what the commentary, this is what John says. The inspired apostle John now says this on verse 22. His parents said these things. Why? Because they feared the Jews. For the Jews had already agreed that if anyone should confess Jesus to be Christ, he was to be put out of the synagogue. So here's again what I want you to see. We've already kind of pointed this out. His parents have a choice. His parents could have stood up and they could have said it was Jesus that did this. But the parents made a choice out of fear. It says in verse 22, it even tells us the reason they denied it, because they feared the Jews. This was their choice. The parents weren't forced into making this statement. They made a choice, just like we've made the point a couple of times already. So the choice is, in this chapter, do you want to walk in darkness or do you want to walk in light? The question is, have your eyes been open? How have your eyes been open? Verse 10. Who opened your eyes? How does he now see? Verse 19. And look at, they call the man back in. The Pharisees call this guy back in. So verse 24. So the parents said, ask him. We don't want to answer the question. Ask him. So for the second time, they called the man who had been blind and said to him, give glory to God. How ironic is that statement from the Pharisees? How ironic is it? Give glory to God. We know that this man is a sinner. So watch this guy's response. He answered, whether he is a sinner, I do not know. Look at what this man's statement is. One thing I do know. This is what I know. There's no debating this. I used to be blind, but now I see. This is such a powerful verse, such a powerful statement. He still didn't know who Jesus was. He was still kind of on this journey of self-discovery. About discovery about who Jesus is. I don't really know this guy. I can't really answer these. I do know this. I have always been blind, but I'm not anymore. One thing I know, though I was blind, now I see. So then the Pharisees are angry at his comment. They begin to revile him, and they say, they run Jesus down. No shock there. They reviled him, saying, you are his disciple. They're mocking him. You are his disciple, but we are disciples of Moses. Well, in reality, they're not, are they? But that's what they're claiming. We're disciples of Moses. We know that God has spoken to Moses, but as for this man, we do not know where he comes from. Now watch this guy who's been born blind. He is not a teacher. He has been excluded from temple worship because of his physical deformity. But this man answered, why, this is an amazing thing. You do not know where he comes from. Watch this. Yet he opened my eyes. Now look at this guy's statement. We know. I'm going to highlight that word know, because look at that word. We know that God does not listen to sinners. We know God does not listen to sinners. But if anyone is a worshiper of God and does his will, God listens to him. So this guy is now claiming, look at what he is claiming. This guy must be a worshiper of God. This guy must be somebody who does the will of God. How do I know this? Because God listens to him. Here is this man who has been born blind, and he is now teaching the Pharisees. Verse 32, the man continues, never since the world began has it been heard that anyone opened the eyes of a man born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing. That is a powerful statement, that this man who can now see, figuratively, he's seeing things, and of course literally, if this man were not from God, he could do nothing. They answered him, you were born in utter sin, and would you teach us? And they cast him out. Now watch, Jesus hears about this, and he finds this guy, and then Jesus asks him, do you believe? Do you believe in the Son of Man? And he said, who is he, sir, that I may believe in him? Jesus said to him, you have seen him, and it is he who is speaking to you. And he said, Lord, I believe. And he worshiped him. Powerful passage. How are your eyes open? Verse 10. How does he now see? See, this goes back to that phrase in chapter 1, verse 9, in chapter 3, verse 19, in chapter 8, verse 12, earlier in chapter 9. How does this guy now see? Because Jesus is the light of the world. You see, well, that's the statement, right? That's the powerful verse of this chapter. I am the light of the world. Here's a guy who could not see, figuratively, literally. Jesus opens his eyes. The Pharisees, they don't want to see. They're going to remain in darkness. And this man says, one thing I know, though I was born blind, now I see. And it says here, he says, Lord, who is he that I may believe? And he says, I am he. I am the Son of Man. And again, look at verse 38. Lord, I believe. Watch what he does. And he worshiped him. He worshiped him. This is a significant thing as well to note this. Why is it significant? Because the apostles, they refused worship. When you look in the book of Acts, when people were falling down in front of Paul, he would refuse worship. We are men like you. Even the angels in Revelation 22, I think it's verse 9. In Revelation 22, when John falls, the guy who writes the Gospel of John, when John falls before the angel says, no, don't worship me, worship God. So the fact that this man worships Jesus Christ and Jesus accepts this worship is a demonstration of the deity of Jesus Christ. See, Jesus in this passage is the one who takes people from darkness to light. He's the one who can open the eyes of the blind, of a person been born blind, physically, spiritually. Now, I'll make this point, and I've made it several times. We still have to choose. You see, the parents, they didn't want to choose verse 22 because they were afraid. The Pharisees didn't want to choose. Why? Because they loved darkness more than the light. But we have to choose. Do we want to choose Jesus Christ? Do we want to follow Jesus Christ? He is the light of the world. He is the one who can open the eyes of those who are blind. He can help us to see. He's not going to force you to see. He's not going to force you to follow him. The choice is ours. And the choice is yours. Anyway, I hope you have got something from this short study, and I hope you have a blessed day. Thank you.